I can't engage with these two separate forces, I'll lose them both one at a time. So I tried to make a decent formation and fight this force with both of them at the same time.
Battle control initialized.
Hello there, comrades and cannon fodder. It's Dvoid here. I've got a 1v1 multiplayer game, and we're on Bucharest map for this one. This was my first game of the day, so I'm using Russia for this one. My opponent's using Russia as well. Obviously, I'm more comfortable with Russia. It's my usual faction, and I'm in my usual red colour. That's the primary colour I go with is red. That was the colour of Russia in the original game, was red as well, so that's part of the reason why I go with it. But if my opponent uses red or anything close to it, my viewers will know I go with a green, sort of camouflage, basic green for my secondary colour. If I use France, I use a light blue, similar to the horizon blue that France used in the First World War. That's my reasoning behind the blue when I use France, but this time we're going red, Russia, and my opponent's in purple using Russia. My opponent's in the bottom left here, but I've sent my first 3 rifles to investigate the enemy's presence and check the enemy's oil derrick. Now, I've moved here and seen no enemy presence, but as soon as they opened fire, I got this rifleman back, and this rifleman back a bit, but I wanted to see what they were up to, how aggressive they were being, where their presence was, but I had no idea they were sending rifle guards around the map like this. I didn't know. So I'm moving forward, thinking the enemy presence isn't that strong, and I've run into a strong force of rifles. Now my engineer, I had time enough to turn back, save the engineer, but these 2 rifles, I thought, well, yeah, they're not going to do anything. I'll leave them as they are and hopefully catch the enemy engineer. And I thought, I didn't know if they'd trained one and just kept him out of the way while there was combat, or if they hadn't trained one at all. I didn't know. That's why I've got a rifleman there, and my opponent's just trained his first engineer, and he's going in the right direction, but not enough. There you go, and I opened fire, got him. I'm a veteran, but yeah, I couldn't take on that many rifles with them. I couldn't kill one in that time. Just training my first rocket soldiers. There's my second one. And I've got this rifleman here. And I was hoping to find out if my opponent trained a second engineer straight away or not. And they have. They've got one there. So let's see how well they investigate. I wonder if they noticed that, because I killed him pretty quickly. Oh, look, they are investigating. If I'd have had him closer, this rifleman, I could have got that engineer. Not far off. We've got a couple of rifle guards very close. And this is my opponent's capturing their first oil derrick. This is an ideal example to show you the view range differences. I can see this, look, so I can't see the rifleman stood there, and neither can the enemy rifleman. But we've got some engagements. I'm using my APC, and riflemen, their shots bounce off the APC. So as soon as I saw there were no rockets being fired, I knew I had these engagements. And I saw there's still no rockets coming back, and I found the enemy engineer. That's not good. My opponent did start to train rocket soldiers. They've got 1. But this is a small force, and I've only got 3 rocket soldiers there, so it's not a strong enough force to attack. But I thought, right, I'll hold my position and bring my engineer forward and capture this oil derrick. And then if my opponent does have any strength or want to attack in return, a counter-attack or anything like that, then it's likely to be focused on the oil derrick, because that's where I'm hoping to direct their attention with this engineer, by capturing it and draw their attention. So any response, hopefully, will go there. And my base, economy, everything's reasonably well protected. I haven't got anything guarding this route, and that's a common route for players sending, say, an APC with 4 or 5 rocket soldiers in. That's an obvious route. you should protect that, and normally I do. But I've got the capture up, I've just taken the enemy's oil derrick, so I've got 2 for the time being. Now my opponent won't be able to see that anymore because it belongs to me. Let's have a look at early army values. 6,000 to me, 4,000 to my opponent. And my opponent's just built their service depot. And at the moment, there we go, their rifle guard being killed will tell the enemy that I'm expanding. So even if that was quick, so they may not have noticed, but even if they didn't notice, they'll realise their rifle guard has been destroyed eventually, it's been killed. And that will tell them that most likely I've expanded to that point. So I'm building in this direction. I was just going to say, and lately, if the map allows it, I try and build in this direction towards one of the expansions, so that when I do expand, say to here, I can use a single construction yard and say place it here to give me build radius over an expansion and my home base. And that way I can build base defences and fight and protect my home base and the expansion. And it frees up this construction yard to pack up into an MCV and move around with your frontline units and making expansions, etc. And it does mean that you don't have 2 on the move, so when you deploy one construction yard and start setting up an expansion, your other construction yard's going to be here for a while, at least in the early game, so it's not moving around to another expansion or to secure an ore field. It's not doing that. So that's one aspect you want to be mindful of, because good players, they move out to the first expansion and then they'll bring the home base to a second expansion, but while this is here building, this one will be moving out now. Whereas with this tactic that I'm using, I'm not, obviously. These MCVs are stopping, and eventually this one will move out, but this one's going to stay here for a while. Now, I'm at 18,000 army value, my opponent is at 12,000 army value, so I've got an advantage in army value at this point. It's only 7 minutes in, so I've got a decent army value because I've not been suffering losses. But there's my engineer and APC. I'm hoping to use them like an asset so that when I attack, I keep them behind the frontline unit, so that when I attack, if I get a chance, I can bring the APC in for a capture. You know, if the opportunity arises, I can quickly bring an engineer to the front line if I need it. And that rifle guard has told me about the enemy advance, and it's there, I've just dealt with them. But look, I'm responding. Your rifle guards are invaluable. This hitting this here, these infantry aren't enough to stop it, but I'm bringing these in now, and my main army's even going to join in. I'm at 24,000 army value, my opponent's at 17. And I left this small force here because I was thinking, I think they're interrupting the enemy reinforcement stream going from the home base to the front line in this direction. But I saw the size and position of that force and thought, I can't engage with these 2 separate forces, I'll lose them both one at a time. So I tried to make a decent formation and fight this force with both of them at the same time. So I led them this way a little bit, and it's working okay in this direction, although I have lost my tanks screening this force. And my opponent's focusing on this side. And I'm falling back with my APC. I used it for a bit of view range and screening, or it was on hand to do so for this side as well. But I don't want to lose it. I'm running out of vehicles at the front line, so it has to be there, but, you know, it's risky. Only take a second of enemy gunfire to kill an APC, and look, the enemy... Right, I'm managing to hold them. Oh no, my APC. No, what a shame. I should have had this tank up front instead. There's some nice veterans there. An advanced reconnaissance squad. There you go, the enemy are falling back. See, I'm watching. You have to keep an eye out, have your rifle guards, and even during battles, that's the main time to check and look at your guard units, your scouts and stuff, and check for attacks and engineer captures. And when the battles are going on, you need to do it as much then as any other time, because your opponent knows the sound of grenadier drops and things like that, eco raids. The sound is covered by the battle. So it's the best time for your opponent to do that. So if you're up against a good player and you're fighting a battle, whether you're winning or losing, have a quick check around. Make sure your rifle guards are alive and that you're not having your war factory captured by an engineer. Just check. Have a quick check during battle. It only takes a second or a couple of seconds. So yeah, always do that. Because good players use the sound of battle to disguise things like grenadier drops, because they have a very distinctive sound. But we're at 14,000 army value each. My opponent's slightly ahead, in fact. Very interesting. They've done very well to do that. Now I'm bringing the MCV forward to join the battle. And my opponent is bringing reinforcements in. This tank group should have been with this infantry group, before the battle started. And I've spread out my infantry a little bit. I did give the X command, the scatter command. They didn't scatter far, but I didn't want them to. But yeah, I've taken out those tanks, no problem. And my opponent sent this force, an attack force, into a separate location. I'm aware of it, look, because I'm placing defences, and I should immediately have primary production here. You should have straight away. Oh, it's there, and I have left primary production here because of thieves. I don't want them being trained here, so it's a risk. I know I'm taking a big risk. Now I've had a thief, an engineer. My opponent's got 7 grand. That's taken over 3. Very nice. And 1 thief was trained over here because I had to transfer primary production, but I've got my engineer capturing there. That's a useful refinery to capture. But I need to protect the engineer, of course, and I'm trying to defend this. There's my other thief. That's a shame. There's another one. I've taken the refinery, and there I've managed to fight off that force. And I've got a refinery in a good position, and that infiltration was nice. But I've got 2 thieves here. In fact, I've got 3. So I can't leave them rushing up to the front line hoping to grab a tank, because it wastes them. They're 500 each. I need to keep them safe, and the engineer, and use them for chokeholds, infiltrations and captures. You can't waste a tank like that. I should have pulled it back. But I've discovered the enemy, and the ore refinery has been lost straight away, but I've got a good formation. I just need to fill it out. Get my tanks up front, and oh, the army values have dropped big time for my opponent. It was, my opponent was slightly ahead last time I checked. And this big chunk is gonna, you know, rule the battlefield, at least over here. You see, right, now my opponent's called it there at that point, and they've lost their entire army value. But yeah, they didn't expand to this point, and I didn't expand here or here, and I had more than enough time. My opponent did expand this far, so that was quite good. And I did actually start to move this. This is moving forward, so I would have taken that. But upon discovering that the enemy has already mined a bit, I may have changed my mind and advanced to expand in this direction instead, here or here. But there you go, there's the end of that one. And that was actually my first game of the day. I've just got tech into action. Look, obviously I had my thieves and engineer capturing, but I've got my radar dome, and I've started to build V2s, and I've got an airfield as well, because when you get your radar dome, when you're using Russia or Ukraine, especially Ukraine, you should build an airfield immediately, because that starts to count down your paratroops and your spy plane support powers. It starts to count down straight away, so you're not wasting time building it 10 minutes later. And in that time, you could have used the paratroopers a couple of times. and the spy plane a few times. But with Ukraine, you've got the para bombs as well, so it's even more essential to build an airfield as soon as possible. But like I say, I have ordered a few V2s. I've got 3 under production, I believe. I've got a decent force still anyway, so I'll look at the graphs and charts. Here's the army graph. Yeah, I was ahead. After some sort of like engagement early on, I was ahead of my opponent by a comfortable margin there, but they were increasing in army size at the same rate I was, very nearly. But look at that drop. I've had a savage loss at the 8-minute point, a savage loss, and I dropped below my opponent's army value, but from just before 9-minute mark, my opponent was ahead in army value, and up to 10 minutes they were ahead, and then it looks to about 10.5 minutes they're equal, but then their army value drops off. When it gets to just after 10.5 minutes, it's it's a bad time for the enemy's army, that is. Whereas mine, I do suffer losses. I'm suffering them all the way through the game, but you know, I recovered okay. Earnings graph, yeah, pretty even there actually, but I do have a nice spike. That, I'm assuming that's the capture. Not the capture, sorry, that's the infiltration by my thief. Yeah, the thieves, I do like them. I got over 3 grand out of it, out of that infiltration, before I captured the refinery. There's my army. I've only managed to build 1 V2 so far, but I've got a nice group of heavy tanks, a few thieves, flamethrower, engineer, and a basic amount of infantry. It's 18,000 army value, so, you know, I was suffering losses. Otherwise, you know, my opponent did well. Otherwise, I'd have a far larger army. I lost 5 structures, my opponent lost 4. I killed 279 units, my opponent killed 213. I destroyed 66,000 credits worth of my opponent's assets. My opponent destroyed 47,000 credits worth of my assets. And I do have the paratroopers and spy plane support powers counting down. Building flame towers and V2s, so I need to get my next refinery in production at this point. I've got 2 war factories. I've got 7 barracks at least. There's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. As soon as you've got 7, you've got enough, and your infantry will be trained at full speed. But there's no harm in having extra barracks, because you can produce them in different places, and say the enemy's overrunning me from this direction, I can, when that barracks is destroyed, I can still produce infantry from this one and try and make a stand at the war factory, for example. So having more than 7, there's no harm in that. Plus, a screen of barracks around your structures is an extra bit of view range for your structures, and it blocks the enemy, provides view range for your infantry that are behind them, gives them a view range advantage over an enemy force that's attacking you. So extra barracks are a very good, they're like, think of them as little fortifications or little defences. They give you extra view range, slow the enemy down, it's production for your infantry. So having as many barracks as you like, there's nothing wrong with that, it's all good. When I did move my expansion up to here or here, I will definitely have barracks to produce infantry in this part of the map. So, you know, I would have ended up with several more. But that's okay there. Production, I would have had that back on track straight away. No oil derricks left. They've both been destroyed. I've got 7 ore trucks, and I earned 100,000 credits. My opponent earned 84,000 credits, and I've got over 6 grand left. My opponent's got just under 1,000 credits. But I was at 29 actions per minute. My opponent was at a relaxed 17. They did say they were a casual, relaxed player. So there's the proof. They were just chilled, having a game for fun, and it was a fun game. So well played to them. I enjoyed that one. It was fun. There's our scores, and the scores reflect what happened. Quite, you know, it's plain and simple. You know, it was, you know, the scores reflect the result and how it went. I got 745. My opponent got 463. And there's all your stats, charts, and graphs, etc. I hope you enjoyed the game. If you did, give us a sub and a like. And thank you very much for watching. and take good care of yourselves. Until next time, goodbye.
Battle control terminated.